The temporary camp was quiet except for the soft sounds of wounded soldiers breathing and the occasional beep of medical equipment. They had set up in a defensible valley while waiting for full extraction. The command had ordered them to hold position until reinforcements could secure the area properly. It would be at least 12 hours. Velric sat on a supply crate watching Doc June move between patients. The corpsman had been working for 6 hours straight. His movements were slower now, fatigue obvious in every step, but he kept checking vitals, adjusting medications, talking quietly to the wounded. Major Hyun was sleeping, heavily sedated but alive. The Vreen soldier was recovering well. 3 other soldiers had minor injuries that Doc had already treated. Private Daeho sat nearby, pulling guard duty. His eyes scanned the valley rim, but Velric could tell the young Marine was exhausted too. They all were. Private, Velric said quietly, moving closer. May I speak with you? Daeho looked over, surprised. Sure, Commander. What do you need? I need to understand something about your military culture. About Doc. Daeho's tired face broke into a slight smile. What about him? Why do you listen to him? He cannot order you to do anything. Yet you obey him as if he were your commanding officer. Today in the canyon, you risked your life to protect him. Why? Daeho was quiet for a moment, thinking. That's hard to explain, sir. It's how it works. Doc is Doc. If he tells you to do something, you do it. But that makes no sense. Your rank structure is clear. Orders flow downward from higher rank to lower rank. Doc is an E4, maybe E5. You are E3, he is barely above you. Yet you treat his words as commands. I don't think of them as commands, Daeho said slowly. More like really important advice. When Doc talks, he's usually talking about keeping someone alive. You don't argue with that. You don't question it. You just help however you can. But why? Daeho struggled to find the words. Look, Commander. In a firefight, my job is to shoot the enemy and follow orders. That's what I'm trained for. Doc's job is different. His job is to keep us alive, not to kill the enemy. To save us, that's special. He paused, searching for the right word. That's sacred almost. Sacred? Velric repeated the word carefully. It did not translate well into his language. Yeah. Like holy or really important in a deep way. Docs have been part of human culture forever. Healers, medicine people, doctors. Every human society has had them, and we've always treated them with respect. Because they're the ones who stand between us and death. This was interesting. You are saying this is not just military culture. This is broader human culture? Exactly. Daeho seemed relieved that Velric was understanding. When I was in basic training, we had a different corpsman. Doc Isil was her name. She told us on the first day, I don't care about your rank. General or private, you're all just bodies I need to keep breathing. If I'm working on you, you follow my instructions. If I tell you to shut up and stay still, you shut up and stay still. And she meant it. And the officers accepted this? Of course. The officers know that docs are special. A good doc can mean the difference between everyone coming home or half the squad dying. You don't mess with that. You don't limit that with rank and regulations. Velric absorbed this information. So humans have deliberately created a position in their military that exists partially outside the formal hierarchy? I guess so, Daeho said. Never thought about it like that. It's just normal for us. Movement caught their attention. Sergeant Yuna approached, her left arm in a sling. She had taken shrapnel during the canyon fight, and Doc had dug out 3 pieces of metal from her shoulder. She looked tired and in pain, but she was still moving around, checking on her squad. Daeho, go get some rest, she said. I'll take over the watch. You should be resting, Sergeant. Doc said, I know what Doc said. Yuna interrupted with a slight smile. He said to rest my arm. Watching for enemies doesn't require my arm. Go sleep. That's an order. Daeho nodded and headed toward the sleeping area. Yuna sat down with a slight wince and looked out at the valley. Velric decided to push his questions further. Sergeant, may I ask you something? Sure, Commander. Earlier today, Doc told you to stop moving. You are a sergeant. He is a corpsman, yet you obeyed. Why? Yuna smiled, touching her injured shoulder gently. You saw that, huh? Yeah, I was trying to help organize the perimeter, and Doc told me to sit down and let him work. I told him I was fine. He told me to shut up and stay still. So I did. You outrank him by 3 levels. On paper, sure. But when Doc is treating you, rank doesn't exist. You're just a patient, and he's the person keeping you alive. You do what he says because he knows what he's doing. You trust him that much? Yuna's smile faded, replaced by something more serious. Commander, 3 months ago we were on a different operation. Bad situation. I took a plasma bolt to the leg. Couldn't walk. Couldn't even drag myself. The enemy was advancing and I was about to be captured or killed. Doc, different Doc, not June, ran back through active fire to get me. Took a hit to his shoulder doing it. Dragged me back to cover while still getting shot at. Worked on my leg right there in the open because I was bleeding out. Saved my life, she paused, her eyes distant with memory. When someone does that for you, when someone puts their own life on the line to save yours, you don't forget. You don't question them. You trust them with everything because they've already proven they'll die before they let you die. All docs do this. The good ones do. And most docs are good. That's why we treat them the way we do. It's not about rank. It's about knowing that when everything goes wrong, when you're hurt and scared and dying, there's someone whose only job is to save you. Someone who won't give up on you. That's worth more than rank. Velric found himself moved by this explanation. Your human culture places great value on those who preserve life. Yeah, always have. Go back through human history. You'll find healers in every culture. Medicine men, doctors, medics, coursemen. Different names, same job. And they've always been treated with respect. Treated as special. Because they are special. The Cassith do not have this, Velric admitted. We have medical personnel, but they are simply another rank in the hierarchy. They have no special status. That's interesting, Yuna said. How do your soldiers feel about that? They feel nothing. Medical personnel serve their function. Warriors serve their function. All are equal in service to the command structure. But if a warrior is dying and the medical person says they need time to save them, what happens? Velric considered this. The tactical situation determines the decision. If holding position is strategically unsound, the medical person must work faster or the warrior is left behind. Yuna shook her head. We don't work that way. Maybe that makes us weak in your eyes. But we believe that every person matters. We don't leave people behind if we can help it, and we give docs whatever they need to save our people. Time, space, protection. Whatever it takes. Even if it risks the mission. Even then, because a mission is just a mission. But our people, our Marines, our soldiers, they're everything. The mission serves them. They don't serve the mission. And Doc is the one who brings them home alive. Across the camp, Doc June finally sat down. He looked exhausted, his face pale with fatigue. Immediately, Corporal Taeyang brought him water and food. Not because anyone ordered it, just because it needed to be done. You should talk to Doc directly, Yuna suggested. He can explain it better than we can. Velric nodded slowly. He waited a few minutes, letting Doc eat and drink. Then he approached the corpsman carefully. Doc June, may I speak with you? Doc looked up, his eyes tired but alert. Sure, Commander. What do you need? I need to understand your role. Your position in the human military structure. It is confusing to me. Doc gave a small laugh. Yeah, I bet. It's kind of unique. Pull up a crate. I'm too tired to stand. Velric sat down across from the corpsman. Up close he could see how young Doc was. Maybe 30 human years. Young for such responsibility. Yet everyone trusted him completely. Private Daiho said your position is sacred. Velric began. Sergeant Yuna said you exist outside the normal rank structure. I am trying to understand how this works. How you command without commanding. Doc was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. I don't think of it as commanding. I think of it as doing my job in a way that everyone recognizes as important. My job is to keep these Marines alive and healthy. That's it. That's my only mission. Not to kill enemies. Not to complete objectives. Just to save lives. But you cannot do that alone. You need others to help you. Yet you cannot order them to help. I don't need to order them. They know what I need. They know that if I'm asking for something, it's because someone's life depends on it. That creates a kind of understanding, a cooperation that doesn't need formal orders. But today, Lieutenant Hana changed the extraction plan because you said you needed time. That is a lieutenant taking direction from an E4. That should not work. Doc nodded. In a normal situation, you're right. But this wasn't about rank. This was about whether Major Hyun lived or died. Hana knew that if I said I needed 2 minutes, it was because without those 2 minutes, the Major would die. She made the choice that saving the Major was worth the risk of waiting. His hands shook slightly as he wrote. Today he had seen something that challenged. The second attack came at dawn. This time there was no warning at all. Velric was checking his equipment when the explosion tore through the eastern wall of the forward base. The blast threw him against a supply crate, and for several seconds he could not hear anything except a high-pitched ringing in his ears. Smoke filled the air. Alarms were screaming. People were shouting, but the words made no sense through the noise in his head. Someone grabbed his arm and pulled him upright. Through the smoke, he saw Private Deho's face. The young Marine was shouting something. Velric shook his head, trying to clear it. Gradually, the ringing faded and sounds became words. Under attack. Get to defensive positions. Velric stumbled after Deho toward the command center. All around them, the base was coming apart. More explosions rocked the ground. Plasma fire cut through the smoke. This was not pirates. This was a coordinated military assault. They reached the command center to find Major Hyun on the ground, bleeding badly from his leg and side. Lieutenant Hana was kneeling beside him, her hands already red with his blood. 2 Vreen soldiers lay nearby, not moving. They had been killed instantly in the blast. Where's Doc? Hana shouted over the noise. Someone get Doc here now. Here. Doc Jun appeared through the smoke, his medical bag already open. He dropped beside Major Hyun and immediately started assessing the wounds. His hands moved quickly but carefully, checking pulse, checking breathing, checking blood loss. Covering Doc. Corporal Tae Yang's voice cut through the chaos, and instantly 3 Marines formed a defensive semicircle around where Doc was working. They faced outward, weapons ready, protecting the space where Doc needed to work. Velric noticed that no one had ordered them to do this. Tae Yang had simply called it out, and it happened. The invisible coordination again, triggered by Doc's presence and need. Lieutenant Hana stood up, leaving the Major in Doc's hands. She moved to the tactical display, which was somehow still functioning despite the damage. We're surrounded. East and north sides are heavy contact. South route is our only extraction option, but it's a narrow canyon. They're trying to pin us here. Captain Soren arrived with his Kassith warriors. We must break out immediately. Every moment we delay, more enemies arrive. We need to stabilize the wounded first, Hana said. There is no time. We must move now. Doc's voice cut through the argument. It was not loud. He did not shout. But somehow everyone heard him. I need 2 minutes. The Major is bleeding internally. If we move him now, he dies. Give me 2 minutes to stabilize him. Lieutenant Hana did not hesitate. We hold for 2 minutes. Set defensive perimeter. Prepare for extraction, but we hold until Doc says we move. Velric watched Captain Soren's face. The Kassith captain was furious. A lieutenant was delaying evacuation based on the request of an enlisted medical specialist? This went against every military principle Soren knew. This is foolish, Soren hissed. The healer has no authority to delay us. Doc says 2 minutes, Hana repeated, her voice cold as ice. We wait 2 minutes. Velric moved closer to where Doc was working. The corpsman's hands were steady despite the plasma fire striking the walls around them. He had opened the Major's armor and was working on the internal injuries with practiced efficiency. His face showed intense concentration but no panic. Around him the battle raged, but in the small space where Doc worked, there was calm. Tae Yang, angle your shield left about 20 degrees, Doc said, without looking up from his work. There's a gap in the coverage. Corporal Tae Yang immediately adjusted his position. Again, no questioning, no hesitation. Doc had identified a tactical problem while treating a patient, and Tae Yang simply fixed it. Deho, watch my 6. Someone's trying to flank from that collapsed wall. Private Deho shifted his aim and fired 3 quick shots. An enemy soldier who had been creeping through the rubble fell back. Got him, Doc. Velric's mind was reeling. Doc was not giving orders. His voice carried no command authority, yet everyone was responding to his observations and requests as if they were orders. More than that, they were treating his words as priority orders, overriding even their own tactical awareness. Doc finished sealing the Major's wounds and attached a blood pressure stabilizer to his arm. He checked his readings one more time, then nodded. He's stable. We can move him, but carefully. No rough handling or the seals will break. Lieutenant Hana immediately started calling out orders. Extraction formation. 2 stretcher carriers for the Major, wounded in the center. Combat effective on the perimeter. We're taking the South Canyon route.
Move out!
The squad began organizing for evacuation. The Kassith warriors formed the front line. The Vreen soldiers took flanking positions. The humans organized around the wounded, with Doc in the center coordinating the stretcher team. They moved out into the canyon. It was narrow, with high walls on both sides. Perfect ambush territory, but it was their only option. Enemy fire followed them, striking the canyon walls and sending rock chips flying. Halfway through the canyon, one of the Vreen soldiers went down with a plasma burn across his back. He fell hard and did not move. Doc immediately moved toward him. "I've got him. Keep moving, I'll catch up." "Doc, it's too exposed," Sergeant Yuna shouted. "He's dying right now." "I'm not leaving him." Doc reached the fallen Vreen and started emergency treatment. The alien's carapace was cracked, green blood leaking from the wound. Velric saw it happen again. Without orders, without discussion, 3 Marines automatically stopped and formed a protective triangle around Doc. They returned fire at the canyon rim, keeping the enemy suppressed while Doc worked. But this time it was not enough. The enemy fire was too heavy. They could not stay in this position long. "Doc, we have to move," Tae-young shouted. "They're massing for a push." 30 more seconds. "He'll bleed out if I don't seal this." Lieutenant Hana made a decision. "All units suppressing fire on the canyon rim. Give Doc his 30 seconds." Every weapon opened up at once. Human rifles, Kassith energy weapons, Vreen plasma throwers. The canyon filled with light and noise. It was not accurate fire. It was not meant to be. It was meant to keep enemy heads down while Doc finished his work. Velric found himself firing too, his weapon spitting energy bolts at the shadows on the canyon rim. He was not sure what he was shooting at. He was just shooting, adding his fire to the wall of suppression. "Done," Doc called. "Get him on a stretcher." "Move now!" They moved, running through the canyon while carrying their wounded. It was chaos. It was desperate. But they made it through to the other side, where their extraction ships were waiting with engines already hot. As they loaded the wounded onto the ships, Captain Soren approached Lieutenant Hana. His voice shook with barely controlled anger. "You risked the entire unit for one soldier. You delayed our extraction because your medical specialist requested it. This is not proper military procedure." Hana turned to face him, her face hard. "That medical specialist just saved our commanding officer's life and a Vreen soldier, who would have died otherwise. We don't leave our people behind. And when Doc says he needs time, he gets time. That's how we operate. You let an enlisted man dictate strategy. I let Doc do his job and I did mine. Everyone got out alive. That's what matters." Soren looked like he wanted to argue more, but Velric stepped between them. "Captain, please. I believe we are missing something important about human military culture. Something we need to understand." Inside the extraction ship, Doc was still working. Major Hyun was unconscious but stable. The Vreen soldier was conscious now, clicking his mandibles in what Velric recognized as a Vreen expression of gratitude. Doc was moving between patients, checking vitals, adjusting medicines, making sure everyone was stable for the flight back to the Stellar Accord. Velric watched him work. This man held no command rank. He could not order anyone to do anything officially. Yet in the canyon, the entire unit's actions had revolved around his needs. They had held position because he asked. They had provided suppression fire because he needed time. They had risked themselves to protect him while he worked, and it had worked. Everyone had survived. Observer. Then approached Velric quietly. "I have been recording everything. The patterns are clear now. When Doc speaks, humans react. Not because he commands them, because they trust him. But trust is not authority," Velric said, though his words sounded hollow even to himself. "Perhaps for humans it is," Then replied. "Perhaps they have built a different kind of authority that we do not have words for." The extraction ship lifted off, carrying them away from the disaster of Krell 9. Behind them, reinforcements were arriving to secure the area. But Velric's attention was still on Doc June, who was now sitting down for the first time since the attack began. The corpsman looked exhausted. His hands were still stained with blood, human, Kassith, and Vreen. His armor was scorched and dented. But he was already checking his medical bag, restocking supplies, preparing for whatever came next. Corporal Tae-yang sat down next to Doc and handed him a water container. "Hell of a morning, Doc." "Yeah," Doc replied, taking a long drink. "Everyone okay?" "Thanks to you. Major's gonna make it. That Vreen, too. You pulled off some miracles back there. Just doing my job." "Doc," Tae-yang said seriously, "I've served with a lot of corpsmen. You're the best." The dropships shook as they entered the atmosphere of Krell 9. Velric gripped his harness and watched the human Marines across from him. They looked calm. Too calm for soldiers heading into a hostile environment. Private Minho was the youngest, and even he seemed more focused than nervous. Doc June sat near the front of the dropship, his medical bag secured between his feet. He wore lighter armor than the others, Velric noticed again, less protection on his chest and arms. More mobility, perhaps, but it seemed foolish. Why would the humans allow their medical specialist to be more vulnerable? 2 minutes to drop, the pilot announced. Sergeant Una stood up, checking her squad. Weapons check. Comms check. Stay tight when we hit ground. Temperature is -38 right now. Suit heaters should handle it, but Doc, you watching for cold stress?
Always, Doc replied simply. There it was again.
Una was a sergeant, 3 ranks above Doc. Yet she was reporting to him, asking him to monitor something. Velric made a mental note. Captain Soren, the Kasith warrior commander, noticed it too. He leaned toward Velric and spoke in their language. Your humans have strange customs. The sergeant treats the medical one as an equal. I have noticed, Velric replied. It is inconsistent with their documented hierarchy. It is weakness, Soren said firmly. In combat, there must be clear command. This confusion will cost them. The dropship hit ground hard. The ramp dropped, and suddenly they were out in the frozen wasteland of Krell 9. The wind cut across the empty plain, howling between the rocks. The human Marines moved in formation, and Velric followed with his own Kasith squad. This was a training exercise, but command had warned them to stay alert. This moon had a history of pirate activity. They moved for 20 minutes across the frozen ground. The mixed squads worked together reasonably well. Corporal Tae Yang led the front element. Private Deho covered the left flank. The Kasith warriors took the right. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Then Private Minho's suit alarm went off. The sound was quiet but urgent. Minho stumbled, his breathing suddenly loud over the comms. My heater. Something's wrong with my heater unit. Velric saw it happen in slow motion. Doc June moved immediately. He didn't run. Running in this terrain was dangerous, but he moved with purpose, his medical bag already opening. Make a hole for Doc, Sergeant Una said over the squad channel. Not a request. A statement instantly, the formation shifted. Marines stepped aside. The Vreen soldiers moved their positions. A clear path opened from Doc's position to Minho. No one questioned it. No one hesitated. They just moved. Velric stopped walking. This was significant. Doc reached Minho and immediately started checking his suit. Talk to me, Minho. How do you feel? Cold, really cold. My fingers, Minho's voice shook. Okay, I've got you. Taeyang, I need a thermal blanket from your kit. Corporal Taeyang didn't hesitate. He dropped his pack and pulled out the emergency blanket. Not because Doc ordered him. Doc's voice hadn't carried any command weight. But Taeyang moved like it was the most natural thing in the world. Doc wrapped Minho in the thermal blanket while working on the suit's heating unit. His hands moved efficiently, checking connections and running diagnostics. It's a loose connection. I can fix it, but he needs 10 minutes of warmth first. His core temp is dropping. Sergeant Una immediately adjusted the squad formation to a defensive circle. We hold here for 10 minutes. Deho, watch that ridge. Taeyang, north approach. Captain Soren approached Velric, confusion clear on his reptilian features. Why do they stop? The medical one is just a specialist. They should leave him to catch up. The mission continues. I believe, Velric said slowly, that to humans the mission does not continue until Doc says it continues. This seemed impossible, yet here they were, an entire mixed squad holding position because a low-ranked corpsman needed time to treat a soldier, not because anyone ordered them to hold, because everyone simply agreed that this was what happened when Doc was working. Velric watched carefully. Doc worked on Minho's suit, his voice staying calm and steady. You're going to be fine. This happens sometimes with the older suit models. Nothing you did wrong. Just bad luck with the connection. Minho nodded, starting to relax as the thermal blanket warmed him. Can you continue, or do I need to call for extraction? Doc asked. I can continue, Minho said. You sure? No shame in calling it if you need to. I'd rather pull you out now than scrape you off the ground later. I'm sure, Doc. I feel better already. Doc finished the repair on the heating unit and checked his diagnostic display. Okay, you're good. But I'm watching you. You feel cold again, you tell me immediately, got it? Got it, Doc. Good man. Doc patted Minho's shoulder and stood up. He looked at Sergeant Una and nodded once, that was all. One nod, Una immediately called out, we're moving. Formation on Taiyang. Let's go. Velric fell into step beside Observer Thin. Did you see that? The medical specialist treated an injured soldier, Thin said. That is his function. No, watch what happened. The sergeant stopped the entire squad. Not because anyone ordered her to, because Doc needed time, and we only moved again when Doc nodded. He did not say anything. He did not give an order. He nodded, and the sergeant restarted the mission based on that nod. Then was silent for a moment. You are right. That is unusual. The mission continued for another hour. They reached the target zone and began running combat drills. The humans paired with the Kasith warriors and Vreen soldiers, practicing coordinated attacks. It was good training, and Velric began to think perhaps he had overestimated the significance of what he had seen earlier. Then the exercise went hot. The weapons fire came from the eastern ridge. Not simulated fire, real plasma bolts that scorched the ground and sent everyone diving for cover. Pirates. They had walked into an ambush. Contact east. Take cover! Sergeant Yuna shouted. The training exercise became real combat in seconds. The Marines returned fire. The Kasith warriors roared and activated their energy shields. The Vreen soldiers scattered to flanking positions. Everything was chaos. Velric found himself behind a rock outcropping, his weapon ready but his mind racing. This was supposed to be training. This was supposed to be safe. Doc, stay down! That was Corporal Taiyang's voice over the comms. Velric risked a look. Doc Jun had not taken cover. He was moving forward toward where several soldiers had fallen in the initial attack. I've got wounded, Doc said, his voice still impossibly calm. I'm going to them, covering Doc, Taiyang shouted, and immediately 3 Marines adjusted their fire patterns. They weren't shooting at targets. They were creating a suppression pattern that gave Doc a corridor to move through. Velric watched in amazement. No one had ordered this. Taiyang had simply announced he was covering Doc, and the other Marines had automatically adjusted their positions to help. This was coordination at a level Velric had never seen. Doc reached the wounded soldiers, 2 Vreen who had been caught in the open. He immediately started working on them, his hands moving quickly to stop bleeding and stabilize injuries. Plasma fire continued to strike around him, but Doc didn't flinch. He just worked. Daeho, I need you on my 6, Doc said quietly. Private Daeho immediately moved from his covered position to put himself between Doc and the enemy fire, using his own body as a shield. A private protecting a corpsman who technically outranked him only slightly. Captain Soren had taken cover near Velric. This is madness, the Kasith captain said. Why do they risk so much for the medical one? Let him do his work in safety. He cannot do his work in safety, Velric said, understanding flooding through him. The wounded are not in safety. So Doc goes to them, and the others protect him while he works. Not because they are ordered to. Because this is what they do. It is foolish. Perhaps, Velric said, watching Doc save the 2 Vreen soldiers while plasma fire scorched the ground around him. Or perhaps it is something we do not understand. Doc finished stabilizing the Vreen soldiers and called over the comms. I need 2 people to carry these wounded back to cover. They're stable but can't move on their own. On it, Doc, Sergeant Yuna replied. She and another Marine immediately moved forward to collect the wounded. The firefight continued for another 10 minutes before the pirates retreated. Lieutenant Hanna had called in air support, and the pirates were smart enough to know when they were outmatched. As the firing stopped, everyone began checking casualties and reorganizing. Velric approached Doc Jun, who was now treating minor injuries and checking everyone for shock. That was very dangerous what you did. Doc looked up from bandaging a Kasith warrior's arm. That's the job. They're out there fighting. I'm here to make sure they survive it. But you could have been killed. So could they, Doc said simply. That's why we all wear the uniform. But my job isn't to kill the enemy. My job is to save our people. Different mission, same risk. Sergeant Yuna walked over, her armor scorched from near misses. Doc, you good? I'm fine. Everyone's stable. No critical injuries, surprisingly. Good, Yuna said. Then she added, Scary out there, Doc. Thanks for pulling those Vreen out. Just doing my job, Sergeant. Velric watched them. Ranks clearly defined. Sergeant and corpsman, yet the way they spoke to each other held mutual respect that transcended rank. That night, back at the forward base, Velric compiled his report. Commander Velric stood in the observation deck of the Stellar Accord, watching the human Marines go through their morning routines. His scaled fingers tapped against his datapad as he studied the charts he had created over the past 3 weeks. Every rank was there. Private at the bottom, then corporal, sergeant above that, lieutenant, captain, major, colonel, general at the top, simple, clear, logical. The Kassith people understood hierarchy. They had built their civilization on it. Every person knew their place. Every person knew who commanded them and who they commanded. It made sense, it worked. And for the past month since joining this mixed coalition vessel, Velric had been certain he understood how humans organized their military. Commander Velric. Observer Then appeared beside him, her insectoid features showing curiosity. "You seem troubled." "Not troubled," Velric replied, his tail swishing slightly. "Confused. I have documented every human rank. I know their structure. But yesterday I observed something that does not fit." Then clicked her mandibles together. "What did you observe?" "A human. The others called him Doc. I checked the rank database. There is no rank called Doc in the human military. Perhaps it is a nickname?" "Perhaps," Velric said, but his tone showed doubt. "But they say it with weight." "With respect. I have heard corporals called by their first names with more casual tones than they use for this Doc." Below them in the training bay, Corporal Tae Yang was running his squad through combat drills. Private Daeho moved through the obstacles, his movements sharp and efficient. The other Marines followed their patterns, and everything made perfect sense to Velric. Tae Yang commanded. The privates obeyed. Clear hierarchy. Then the bay doors opened and a human walked in carrying a large medical bag. He wore the same uniform as the others, but Velric noticed immediately that his armor was lighter. Less protection. The insignia on his shoulder showed his rank, Navy Corpsman. Velric quickly checked his datapad. Corpsman was an enlisted rank, roughly equivalent to a specialist. Lower than Corporal Tae Yang. "Morning, Doc," Tae Yang said, and the entire squad stopped their drill to look at the newcomer. "Morning," the corpsman replied. His voice was calm, quiet even. "Just here to observe. Lieutenant Hana wants me familiar with your combat patterns before the deployment." "No problem, Doc. We'll be running hot drills in about 20 minutes. Might want to stay back for those." "I'll stay close enough," Doc said. "Need to see how you all move under stress." Velric watched carefully. The corpsman, this Doc, had not given any orders, had not commanded anything, yet Tae Yang had adjusted his information to accommodate him. Why, the corpsman was lower rank. Tae Yang should have simply continued the drill. "Then, do you see this?" Velric gestured to the scene below. "I see a medical specialist observing combat training." Then said, "What should I see?" "Watch the corporal. Watch how he positions himself." Below, Tae Yang continued the drill, but Velric noticed something subtle. The corporal had moved slightly. His position now gave him a clear view of where Doc stood. When Private Minho stumbled during an obstacle, Tae Yang's eyes flicked to Doc first, then back to Minho. Not checking with Lieutenant Hana, who stood at the observation window. Checking with the corpsman. Doc gave a tiny nod. Minho was fine. Tae Yang continued the drill. "Did you see that?" Velric asked. The corporal checked with the medical specialist about an injured soldier, then said, "That seems logical. Minho was not injured. He stumbled." But Tae Yang checked anyway, and he waited for Doc's approval before continuing. Why would a corporal wait for approval from someone of lower rank? Then had no answer. The training continued for another hour. Velric watched every interaction. Doc mostly stayed quiet, observing from the side of the bay. But several times, Marines would glance at him. Not at Lieutenant Hana, not at their squad leaders. At Doc, and each time Doc would give small nods or tiny gestures. Nothing obvious. But the Marines seemed to need these confirmations. When the training ended, Lieutenant Hana called everyone together for a briefing. Velric and Then moved closer to hear. "Good work today," Hana said. "Deployment to Krell 9 is in 48 hours. Mixed species teams. We'll be working with Kassith warriors and Vreen soldiers. The environment is hostile. Temperature swings from -40 to +60 degrees. Your suits will handle it, but we need to be smart." She pulled up a holographic display of the moon's surface. "Mission timeline is 6 hours. 4 hours deployment, 2 hours extraction window. Command wants us in and out fast." Private Daeho raised his hand. "Lieutenant, with those temperature swings, won't we be dealing with heat exhaustion issues?" Hana turned to Doc, not to her computer, not to the medical database, to the corpsman standing at the side of the group. "Doc, what's your assessment?" Doc June stepped forward. He looked at the holographic display, studying the terrain and the timeline. The temperature swings are the main concern. 4 hours is manageable if we're smart about hydration and rest cycles. I'd recommend we plan mandatory hydration stops every 45 minutes. And if anyone shows signs of heat stress, they pull back immediately. No heroics, Hana nodded. Agreed. We'll build that into the mission plan. Velric's tail stopped moving. A lieutenant had just asked for assessment from a lower-ranked enlisted soldier, and then agreed to change the mission plan based on that assessment. This violated everything Velric understood about command structure. After the briefing ended, Velric approached Lieutenant Hana. He had to understand this. Lieutenant, may I ask a question about human command structure? Hana smiled. Sure, Commander. What's on your mind? This doc, he is a corpsman, enlisted rank. Yet you sought his opinion on mission planning. You changed the plan based on his recommendation. Why? Hana looked surprised by the question. Because he's Doc. He knows what the Marines need to stay healthy and combat effective. I'd be stupid not to listen to him. But he is lower rank than you. So are most of the Marines. I still listen when they have valuable input. But you specifically asked him. You changed the mission for him. Hana paused, thinking about how to explain. Doc's job is to keep my Marines alive and healthy. When it comes to medical issues or physical capability, his word carries weight. If Doc says we need hydration stops, we need hydration stops. It's that simple. Even though he cannot order you to do this, he doesn't need to order me. I trust his judgment. Every Marine on this ship trusts Doc's judgment. That's how it works. Velric returned to his quarters that evening more confused than ever. He pulled up his careful charts and graphs. Everything showed a clear hierarchy. Orders flowed down from higher ranks to lower ranks. Authority was based on position, yet this Doc person seemed to exist outside that structure somehow. He held no command position. He could not give orders. Yet others sought his approval and changed their plans based on his words, then visited him late in the evening. Did you find your answers? No, Velric admitted. I found more questions. The lieutenant said she trusts Doc's judgment, but trust is not part of a command structure. Trust is an emotion. Hierarchies are built on authority, not emotions. Perhaps human hierarchies are different than ours. Perhaps, Velric said, staring at his charts. But I need to understand how. We are about to go into combat alongside these humans. If their command structure is unpredictable, we need to know. The Coalition needs to know. He made a note in his report. Subject Doc appears to hold informal authority not reflected in rank structure. Requires further observation, potential command structure vulnerability or cultural anomaly to be investigated. Velric looked out his window at the stars passing by. In 2 days they would deploy to Krell 9. Perhaps in the field under pressure the human command structure would reveal its true nature. Perhaps this Doc would fall back into his proper place in the hierarchy. Or perhaps, Velric thought with a chill running down his spine, perhaps the humans had built something into their command structure that the rest of the galaxy did not understand at all. He needed to know. The mission would tell him everything. That was her decision as commanding officer. I just gave her the medical information she needed to make that decision. But the extraction went wrong in the worst possible way. One moment they were loading onto the transport ships, organized and ready to leave. The next moment the sky was full of missiles and the ground was exploding beneath their feet. Velric found himself thrown sideways by the blast. His ears rang with the now familiar sound of battle. Through the smoke and confusion, he heard Lieutenant Hana shouting orders trying to organize a response. But the enemy had planned this perfectly. Their fire came from multiple directions, cutting the Coalition force into separate groups. Fall back to the canyon. Hana's voice carried over the comms. Regroup at the rally point. But the canyon was already blocked. Enemy forces had moved into position during the night, cutting off that route. The Coalition force was split. Velric tried to move toward where he had last seen Hana, but another explosion forced him back. When the smoke cleared, he realized he was separated from the main command group. Around him, he counted survivors. Corporal Taeyang was here, along with Private Daiho and Private Minho. 3 Kasith warriors from Captain Soren's unit. 2 Vreen soldiers, and Doc June still carrying his medical bag even though blood was running down the side of his face from a cut on his forehead. And Velric himself, wounded. He looked down at his leg and saw the piece of shrapnel buried in his thigh. The pain hit him a moment later, sharp and overwhelming. "Commander's hit," Deho shouted. Doc was beside him immediately, easing him down behind a rock. "Let me see." "Velric, stay still." "I've got you." The corpsman's hands moved quickly, cutting away the armor around the wound. Velric tried to focus, tried to think tactically, but the pain made it hard to concentrate. "Tae Yang, situation report," Doc called out while working on Velric's leg. The corporal scanned their surroundings. "We're cut off from Lieutenant Hana and the Major. Comms are down. Enemy forces on 3 sides. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they move in." "Can we reach the rally point?" "Not with wounded. They'd cut us down in the open." The Kassith warriors were arguing among themselves in their own language. Velric understood enough to know they were debating whether to fight or flee. Without Captain Soren to lead them, they were uncertain. The Vreen soldiers looked equally lost, clicking their mandibles nervously. Corporal Tae Yang tried to take command. "Everyone, defensive positions. We hold here until we can figure out an extraction route." One of the Kassith warriors snarled in broken human language. You are just corporal. Low rank. We do not take orders from low rank." "I'm the senior human military member here," Tae Yang said firmly. "That makes you nothing to us," the Kassith interrupted. "We fight under our own command or we leave." The situation was deteriorating rapidly. The Kassith were refusing orders. The Vreen were panicking. Tae Yang was trying to organize a defense, but nobody was listening. And the enemy was getting closer. Doc finished placing a quick seal on Velric's wound. "That'll hold for now. Velric, can you move?" Yes, with help." The pain was intense, but Velric could function. Doc stood up and his voice cut through the chaos. Not loud, not aggressive, but absolutely clear and certain. "Everyone listen up." Something in his tone made everyone stop. Even the arguing Kassith warriors turned to look at him. "Corporal Tae Yang, I need defensive positions set up on the north and east approaches. Those are our most vulnerable angles." Tae Yang immediately moved to follow through. "On it, Doc." "Deho, Private Minho is going into shock. I need you to get him calmed down and positioned on the south approach." "Can you do that?" "Yes, Doc." Deho moved to where Minho was breathing too fast, his eyes wide with fear. Doc turned to the Kassith warriors. "You 3 are the fastest here. I need eyes on that ridge. If the enemy is moving to flank us, you'll see them first. We need that information." The Kassith warriors looked at each other. Then surprisingly, they moved. They took positions where they could watch the ridge. Not because Doc had ordered them, but because what he said made sense and there was something in his voice that commanded respect even across species. Vreen soldiers, tight defense around the wounded. "Commander Velric can't move fast, and there are 2 others here with injuries. You protect them." The Vreen clicked acknowledgement and formed a protective circle around the wounded. In 30 seconds, Doc had organized what Tae Yang could not. A defensive position that made sense. People in positions that used their strengths. Everyone had a job to do. Velric watched this in amazement despite his pain. Doc had not given orders. He had stated what needed to happen, and everyone had simply agreed that yes, those things needed to happen. And because everyone agreed, it happened. Through the pain, Velric managed to speak. How did you do that?" Doc was checking his medical supplies, preparing for what was coming. "Do what?" "Make them obey." The Kassith refused the corporal's orders. "But they followed your suggestions." Doc looked up at him. "Because I just saved your life, Commander. Everyone here saw that, and they know I'll do the same for them if they get hurt. They're trusting me to get everyone home alive. That's different than command. But it works like command, only because they choose to make it work. If they wanted to ignore me, they could. But they don't, because they know I'm focused on one thing, keeping everyone breathing. That's something everyone can support regardless of species or rank." The enemy fire started up again, closer now. Plasma bolts struck the rocks around their position. The Kassith warriors on the ridge called out positions. The enemy was trying to surround them. Corporal Tae Yang was handling the tactical situation well, calling out targets and coordinating fire. But every few minutes he would glance at Doc, and Doc would nod or shake his head or make small gestures. Information about the wounded, about how long they could hold this position, about when they would need to move. They were working together without formal coordination. Tae Yang handled the fighting. Doc handled everything else. And somehow it worked. Private Minho was still panicking on the south approach. Deho was trying to calm him, but the young Marine was not responding well. His breathing was too fast. His hands were shaking. He was combat ineffective, Doc noticed. Daeho, bring him here. They moved Minho back to Doc's position. The young private was hyperventilating, his eyes unfocused. Minho, look at me, Doc said firmly. Eyes on me. That's it. Now breathe with me. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Follow my breathing, Doc breathed slowly and deliberately. Minho tried to match his rhythm, struggling at first but gradually syncing up. Good. You're doing good. You're safe right now. I'm right here. Nothing's going to happen to you while I'm here. You understand? Minho nodded, his breathing starting to slow. Okay, I need you functional. Can you do that for me? Can you get back in the fight? I think so, Doc. You think so or you know so. Minho took a deeper breath. I can do it, Doc. Good man. Daeho, get him back on the south approach. Minho, you stay focused. I'm watching you. You start feeling that panic again, you call out. I'll talk you through it. Deal? Deal, Doc. They moved back to position. Velric watched Minho's posture change. The young Marine was still scared. Velric could see that, but he was functional now, because Doc had told him he would be okay, and Minho believed him. The battle continued for another 20 minutes. The enemy kept probing their defenses, looking for weaknesses. The coalition group held together, coordinating their fire and protecting their wounded. It should have been chaos. They were leaderless mixed species cut off from command. By every military standard, they should have broken. But they did not break. Because Doc held them together without commanding them. Because Doc was the center around which everything else organized itself. Finally, Taeyang spotted something. Contact! Friendly forces incoming from the west. Reinforcements had broken through. A larger coalition force was pushing toward their position. Relief flooded through the group. We need to move to meet them, Taeyang said. But the extraction route is exposed. We'll be vulnerable. He looked at Doc. The question was unspoken but clear. Could the wounded make the run? Doc assessed quickly. Velric with his leg injury, 2 other soldiers with various wounds, Minho who was barely holding himself together psychologically. We can make it, but I need cover on both flanks. And I need 30 seconds after we reach the friendly forces to make sure nobody's bleeding internally from the running. Can you give me that? Taeyang did not hesitate. You heard Doc, cover on both flanks. We move fast, but we protect the wounded. And we hold for 30 seconds once we reach friendlies. Everyone clear? Everyone confirmed. The plan was simple. The execution would be dangerous, but everyone knew their role. Daeho, you help Commander Velric. Minho, you stay with me. Kassith, you lead. You're fastest and heaviest armored. Vreen, you cover the rear. Taeyang, your tactical command. I'll coordinate the wounded. Ready, they moved. It was controlled chaos, running across open ground while plasma fire struck around them. The Kassith warriors led, their energy shields absorbing hits. Taeyang coordinated the covering fire. Doc kept the wounded moving, supporting those who stumbled, encouraging those who faltered. Velric ran on his injured leg, the pain almost blinding. But Daeho was there, supporting his weight, keeping